So we have just started to get settled in with iOS 14.5 and view through attribution, which most publishers don't yet support, but it's coming. Now we have 14.6 and new changes in SKAdNetwork. I guess whom the gods would destroy, they first drive mad with many, many little changes. We're here with Eran Friedman, who is the CTO of Singular. Let's talk about the IP addresses first, Eran. What's happening there?
Right. So it's interesting. In iOS 14.6, apparently Apple introduced a hidden feature, not announced, not in the release notes in any way, in which they're basically obfuscating IP addresses in the scan postbacks. Technically, it means that they're sending the scan postbacks through a proxy server of theirs and making sure that all the scan postbacks would be received from Apple servers rather than the devices, which effectively protects the IP addresses from being exposed.
Wow. So on a technical level, that's a pretty significant change, right? Instead of something coming from the device, it's going to Apple. What's the path now? What's happening there?
Right. So basically, the first part of the process remains exactly the same. The scan postbacks are kind of saved in the device, you update the conversion value, exactly the same process. But then exactly when the timer kind of exceeds the random timer that we've been talking a lot about, and the postback is about to be set, instead of being sent directly to the registered URL of the ad network, it's sent to the URL with the proxy server. So it's a very simple change in a sense that the postback is just sent through Apple servers directly to the ad network. From the ad network, it looks very similar. They're still getting the postback, but instead of getting directly from the device, they're getting it from the proxy server itself. It's the host name is actually proxy-skadnetwork.apple.com. So they really have showed the designated role of this server in a sense.
And suddenly all of your attributions are coming from somewhere in Kansas or wherever Apple has a server or something like that, right? What does this mean for attribution? What does it mean for some of the geo-based data that people were expecting?
Right. Well, so first of all, it means that you won't be getting the device IP addresses in the scan postbacks, which essentially protects, first of all, the user privacy in a sense, right? Because previously you could think about how to do fingerprinting based on scan postbacks. So now that won't be possible if anyone was even thinking about that approach. Uh, but beyond that, one of the uses that's been discussed in the industry was trying to understand the country of the scan postback essentially based on the IP addresses. And it's kind of, it was a possible granularity level in a sense. Instead of encoding or separating each campaign ID, each scan campaign ID to a different country, you could use multiple countries in the same scan campaign IDs and kind of understand how many postbacks you got from each country. Now with this change, that won't be possible anymore. The way to get country level data from scan postbacks would be to target specific countries in each campaign. So
Yes.
that's kind of the main change there.
Right. Any impact on cohorting or anything else that people might have been trying to do previously?
Yeah, so no major effect on the cohorting themselves, but what this actually means is some potentially good news actually for fraud prevention for scan. Interestingly enough, right? So if you think about it, we have in Singular we have our secure scan method, the 307 HTTP method, which means that we can get the postbacks in addition to the ad network themselves. And before then, we would get the postback across from all the device IPs out there. Now there's kind of an additional safety if you use the secure scan, which we would get if you use the secure scan, we would get them directly from Apple servers, which means that we can validate that this postback with the conversion value and everything is 100% authentic. We can see exactly what is the source that is coming from an Apple server and exactly all the details, including the conversion value. So it's actually an interesting standpoint, an advantage for fraud prevention for scam.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, what about that conversion value? That was a part of the package that was not signed cryptographically. Has that changed?
Correct. That has not changed. This is still not cryptographically signed. And the proxy server, now at least that's requests are going through the proxy server, but there is no additional mechanism that they're doing, like signing the conversion value of any or anything of that sort. So same problem around that. And that's also why the fraud prevention technique is so important.
Excellent, excellent. So that's not the only thing that we saw that was new. You also saw something different happening. We saw some rumbling. You checked your data. You saw something as well around privacy thresholds. What's happening there?
Yeah, so definitely super interesting. So apparently on May 21st, just about roughly a week ago, last weekend, apparently Apple made a pretty significant change in the backend, not related to iOS 14.6 or any of the OS versions. It's completely in their backend. And essentially, it looks like they've changed the privacy threshold for conversion values. In short, it seems like they decreased those thresholds or fixed something in the thresholds, causing the advertisers to get many more conversion values than what we've been seeing before. And we see it across ad networks, across advertisers. Definitely kind of a pretty significant phenomena that started just a few days ago.
Really, really interesting. Do you have any sense of how the proportion changed? I saw some charts online of some people that were saying this is what they had before, this is what they're getting now, and there was maybe an expected portion of maybe 100 installs, and they had data on initially maybe 10 or 20 or something, and it seemed to increase. Do you have any details on that?
Yeah, so I would say we definitely took an initial look at the data, and what we see is that if you have very low volume, let's say if you're getting like only 10 installs per day from for a specific campaign ID, then you won't see any major changes. Obviously, they still want to protect that kind of the low volumes not to surface conversion values. But if you have higher than, let's say, 20 installs per day, not very significant, right? 20, 30 installs per day, then we see that the change is pretty significant. We saw that some campaigns changed from uh, getting 20% conversion values, so very low numbers, to 80 or 90% conversion
Wow.
values. So pretty dramatic. Again, it all depends on kind of the level of scale that you're running, but things look much better now. It seems like kind of the numbers have shifted from a minority of conversion values in some cases to a majority of conversion values, which I think is positive news.
Was that only a problem at low volume, or was it also a problem with customers who had high volume?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we did see previous to the change that there were campaigns at high volume, which had pretty good ratios, I would say, of conversion values, 80%, 70%, 90%, in pretty extreme cases, I would say. So we did see some positive cases before, but now it seems like things are dramatically better, kind of overall. Again, from very initial looks at the data, and it seems like if you're running at scale, again, more than a few dozens of installs per day per campaign a day, which is important, then it seems that you're going to get many more conversion. But basically, majority of the scan postbacks now seems to be with conversion values at these scales.
Excellent, excellent. So we do expect more changes in SKAdNetwork. There, Apple is continuously working on it. We saw View Through come through not too long ago. Uh, any guesses on the next technology or addition that they might make?
Yeah, so we have WWDC coming up in just like a week and a half. So as for 15 is coming, definitely, I think it's going to be interesting. I think my guess is definitely something around scan or privacy is going to be announced. There's a lot of things in the wish list, I think web to app is a big one. A lot of the
Mhm.
web networks can't get scan postbacks at the moment. And I think if they would announce something like that, it would be huge. Creative granularity, of course, coming up a lot. Yeah, so I think those would be my two kind of initial ones. Maybe Apple search ads would now support scan. It's
That
kind
would
of
be
would be
nice, a
interesting to
level
see.
playing
Yeah,
field. Wow, that would be really
for
interesting.
sure.
One
Mhm.
other thing that was interesting, I think that we heard yesterday on the webinar that we did, is even if we can't get creative granularity, report the type of creative, right? Was it a banner? Was it a playable? Was it a video or something like that? Even that would be helpful as well, correct?
Yes, definitely. Any additional granularity would be helpful for sure. And we just talked about country, for example, right? The fact that we don't have any more country from the IP addresses, if they could potentially start provide an alternative, that would be awesome, of course. Now, to to put some perspective on things, you could map the campaign IDs to these levels. You could use the campaign IDs to
Mhm.
specific ad formats. And so, to be honest, from everything we're seeing, a lot of the ad networks aren't necessarily using the full range of 100 campaign IDs that there are. So you
Uh,
could potentially use some of that information for countries or ad formats for sure. With creative IDs, it just gets a bit more granular. That it becomes difficult to manage all of this in 100 IDs. But yeah, we'll see what comes up.
That is a really interesting point you just made that many ad networks aren't using that full range of 100 campaign IDs. I mean, we see Facebook, they want to use 90 of them,
Yeah,
right? They're
exactly.
mine. And others are not. Very interesting things. Thank you so much, Iran, for all your insight.